Whether you're watching this alone in your room, during your commute, or late at night when doubts feel strongest, I want you to know that your questions, your struggles, your doubts, they're all valid. Because at some point in life, we all face that battlefield between doubt and faith. Maybe it was at a gravesite. Maybe it was when you're at the doctor's office and he said cancer. Maybe it's right now as you're watching this video, thinking, how could any of this be true? Let's look at Mark chapter 9, verses 24. Immediately, the father of the child cried out and said, I believe. Help my unbelief. Here, we meet a father, desperate, broken, watching his son suffer. What does he do? He comes to Jesus with a faith mixed with doubt. His story is a lot of our stories. Let's look at verse 22. If you can do anything, have compassion on us and help us. Can you hear the uncertainty in his voice? The desperation, the doubt. What does Jesus do? Jesus, as usual, his response is to cut to the heart. He says, quote, if you can, all things are possible for one who believes. And then comes the Father's honest cry, words that have echoed for centuries since then. I believe. Help my unbelief. See, this isn't just a story about a desperate father. This is a story about us, about the space between faith and doubt, about the reality of believing and questioning at the same time. Let's think about Thomas. Let's go forward. Let's think about Thomas. In John 20, he wasn't just skeptical. My man was adamant. He says, unless I see in his hands the mark of the nails, and place my fingers into the mark of the nails, and place my hand into his side, I will never believe. Never. Never is a strong word. Never is a word I don't like to use. I almost said never again because it's permanent. I'm never going to do this. I'm never going to go there. I'm never going to go here. I'm never going to forgive you. Never is a strong word, but Jesus didn't reject Thomas. He didn't condemn him. Instead, he showed up. Jesus showed up. He said, put your finger here and see my hands, and put your hand and place it in my side. Do not disbelieve, but believe. Let's go back in time. Let's go to Exodus. Think about Moses at the burning bush. God calls him after the fact. He calls him. He wants him to go to talk to Pharaoh and get him to let his people go. Well, we know how that went. But what did he do? Moses doubted again. He doubts. He says, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh? What if they don't believe me? I can't speak well. Excuse after excuse to get out of it, to move on, find somebody else. Every excuse, every doubt. And how does God respond? Not with condemnation, but with presence. He showed up. What did he say? I will be your mouth. I will teach you what you shall speak. Let's go back again. Abraham. Even Abraham, the father of faith, laughed at God's promise of a seed. Let's look at Genesis 17:17. Genesis 17:17 tells us he fell on his face and laughed. He doubted. The man we hold up as this example of faith. What did he do? Doubted. Here's what we need to understand. See, doubt isn't the opposite of faith. It's often the doorway to a deeper faith. But not all doubt is the same, because there's a difference between doubt that seeks answers and doubt that justifies unbelief. See, one leads to growth, the other leads to darkness. Now, those who know me know I don't say a lot. I just don't like speaking unless I need to. I don't love to hear myself talk. as I make a YouTube channel. The point is, I'm typically thinking or looking around, or, to be honest, I'm in my own little world sometimes too. But when I'm there being quiet and thinking and looking around, there are times when I'll look around the room and I see people wrestling. Not WWE wrestling, wrestling with their thoughts, their problems. Some are fighting battles that no one knows about. Some are sitting there thinking, if God is real, why didn't he show up when I needed him most? That's not just a question. It's pain. That's pain speaking. That's hurt, looking for answers. God. And God, he isn't afraid of your questions. Of course not. And he's definitely not intimidated by your doubts. He's God. He knows all. He sees all. He's always there. He can handle anything you throw at him. Let's move forward. Let's look at Hebrews 4:15. It goes like this. For we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weaknesses, but one who in every respect has been tempted as we are, yet without sin. Even Jesus, hanging on the cross, cried out, my God, why have you forsaken me? The very Son of God expressing the deepest human doubt in the darkest human moment. Now, before anyone accuses me of heresy here for a second, Jesus wasn't doubting God's presence or his plan. It was during that pain, during that suffering, he quoted Psalm 22, a psalm that begins with lament but ends in trust. His crying out was an expression of deep anguish, yet it was rooted in ultimate faith. Now let's move on. Here's where many of us get stuck. We think faith means never questioning, never wondering, never doubting. We've turned faith into certainty, and that is not what faith is. What faith is, it's trusting while questioning. Faith is moving forward even when you can't see the whole path. Faith is saying, like that father, I believe, help my unbelief. If you're watching this today and you're not sure God exists, I want you to hear this. Your doubts don't disqualify you from God's presence. They might be the very thing that leads you to him after all. Think about it. If you're wrestling with God, you're still wrestling with God. You haven't walked away. You haven't given up. That wrestling might be the most honest worship you can offer right now. Let's look at James 1:5. James 1:5 tells us, if any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God, who gives generously to all without reproach. Without reproach. Without criticism. Without condemnation. God doesn't mock your questions. He meets them with grace. But, and this is crucial, he meets them with truth. When I was young, I thought faith meant having all the answers. As usual, I was wrong. Faith isn't having all the answers because nobody has all the answers except for God. It's not about having all the answers. It's about trusting the one who does. I think you know who that is. See, here's what we need to do with our doubt, not a list. First, bring it to light. Stop hiding it. Stop pretending. Proverbs 27:17 tells us, iron sharpens iron, and the one person sharpens another. Find people who will sharpen your faith, not just agree with your doubts. Second, face it honestly. That father in Mark 9, he didn't pretend. He didn't hide his struggle. He brought his broken, doubting faith to the Lord, and Jesus met him there. Third, act on what you do believe, not on what you doubt. When Moses doubted his ability to speak, God didn't give him a different assignment. He didn't give up. He didn't just move on. He gave him his presence. When Thomas doubted the resurrection, Jesus didn't argue with him. He showed him his wounds. When Abraham laughed at God's promise, God didn't cancel the covenant. He fulfilled it. Do you see the pattern here? God doesn't remove doubt by argument. He removes doubt by presence. And right now, in this moment, he's present. He's omnipresent. With your questions, with your pain, with your uncertainty. Some of you have been carrying doubt like it's a secret shame. You've been thinking, if they only knew what I really thought. If they only knew what I really questioned. But what if your doubt isn't your greatest weakness? What if it's an invitation to your greatest strength? What if every question mark in your faith is God's invitation to go deeper? If every doubt is a door he's asking you to walk through. See, the real question isn't whether you have doubt. The real question is what you're doing with it. What are you going to do with it? Will you let it drive you away from God? Or will you let it drive you to Him? Will you hide it in silence, or will you bring it to His presence? Right now, wherever you are, wherever you're watching this, wherever you're listening to this, in your car, in your room, at work, God's extending His hand to you. Just as Jesus extended His hands to Thomas, wounds and all, reality and all, truth and all. He's not afraid of your questions. He's not threatened by your doubt. He's waiting for you to do what the Father did, to bring your broken, doubting faith to Him and cry out, I believe, help my unbelief. This is your moment. This is your invitation. This is your doorway to deeper faith. Right now, wherever you are, you can have your own altar moment. You don't need a church building right now. You don't need a preacher. You just need an honest heart ready to meet God in your doubts. Because here's the truth. God isn't waiting for the perfect faith. He's waiting for honest hearts. He's not looking for certainty. He's looking for surrender. The question isn't whether you doubt. The question is whether you'll let that doubt lead you to Him. If this message spoke to you today, if it touched you in that place of doubt that you've been carrying alone, share it. Someone in your life is wrestling with these very same questions right now, fighting these same battles in silence. Send them this message. Let them know that their doubt doesn't disqualify them from God's presence. Sometimes the greatest act of faith is helping someone else find theirs. Lastly, of course, like, share, and hit that notification bell to join me every week as we walk through God's words, as we walk through faith's deepest questions together. This isn't just content. It's a conversation meant to matter. Remember, your doubt doesn't threaten God. It might just be the doorway to finding Him in a deeper way. I'm Ty. I'll see you next week.